Welcome to Rewiring Health, where you'll find a combination of science and spirituality to reclaim your health and realize your worth. I'm your host, Kelly Kessler, and I'm on a mission to help you stop self-abandoning and start embracing yourself. Join me as we dive into heart-centered, authentic conversations that not only will inspire you, but help you unlock a whole new perspective. You are here for a reason. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the 200th episode of Rewiring Health. It's so crazy to me because I remember the first episode I recorded nearly 3 years ago, and I sat there and just felt like I was on this resistance train of like, okay, I just need to hit record. And it felt so foreign and so uncomfortable. And I just stepped into that place of discomfort and recorded that first episode. And I listen back now and it feels a little cringeworthy to listen to that episode, but it truly was that first step in believing in myself and really just being consistent. And I share that because that is truly what any journey and transformation is you want to invite something new into your life. It's completely uncomfortable because you've never done it before. It's going to feel foreign. It's going to feel a little scary. And it's that moment when you decide that you're stepping into it, that you're going to do it regardless of how it feels. And then you just continue to do that and say yes to it and say yes to yourself over and over and over again. And here we are, 200 episodes later, and the transformation from that person I was 3 years ago to now is tremendous. And I am so incredibly grateful for this platform in all the things I have learned, in all the connections I've made through this platform, and all the amazing people who have shared their stories, their journeys, and their wisdom along the way. This podcast has become the top 5% globally ranked, and I have had 110 guests on this podcast so far, and I've recorded 90 solo episodes. It's been played in 61 countries, which is so incredible to think about. Across the globe, people are tuning in to listen to this podcast. It is so incredibly humbling, and I am so incredibly grateful for everyone who has taken their precious time to tune in. And I want to share 20 lessons that I've learned and I've gained through this podcast, through the conversations, through the incredible stories that I've heard from people who have overcome some of the most difficult situations to then experience a life that is so freeing. As I was approaching the 200th episode, I know I wanted to make it special to really allow everything that's come from this podcast to come together in one episode. And as I was sitting in silence one day, it just came to me that I've gained so much through these conversations that I want to share 20 of the top lessons I've learned through this experience personally and through the conversations that I've had with the most amazing guests that have been on this podcast. So here are the 20 lessons that I have taken away from this experience. Number 1, we are always learning. We are always growing, and we have to give ourselves grace in this process, that at no point will we have all the answers. And the minute we think we do have the answers, something in life will happen that will make us realize that we have to learn and evolve and elevate ourselves to the next level. So know that we are always learning, and we should always be curious about that. If we move through life with curiosity and wondering, what can I gain from this experience? What is there to pull from this? What can I learn from this? It becomes so much more expansive in the process. Number 2, seek from within what we usually pursue outward. One thing that has come again and again through this podcast is the idea of validation, in that we're constantly seeking out validation from others, thinking that someone else has more authority or more power or more knowing in our lives than we know ourselves. And at no point should we relinquish that. It really is our own knowing of ourselves and really tuning into who we are and being able to validate our own experience is where that freedom and that inner peace comes from. So go within. And I just had the last podcast I recorded, we talked about meditation and how so many people get wrapped up in the external world thinking it's going to give us that fulfillment, thinking that the job, the finances, the house, whatever it is going to be the answer to feel fulfilled. And so many people spend years of their life working ferociously to get to that point, only to realize that that was never the answer. And then when we turn inward, we realize that we had it all within us all along. And it really is like Dorothy and the ruby slippers. She tried to get home in all these external means, but she really had the power with her all along. If she just clicked her shoes, it was just knowing that she had that. And that's what I'm taking from this podcast and have realized that we all have this power. We have this power to really come home to ourselves, and we don't need to rely on the external world being perfect or getting all the things that we think are going to be the answer to that. It's just realizing we have the power within ourselves. Number 3, trust the lessons and how life unfolds. This is one that I think we can always learn and really embody, in that it can be really hard to trust life when so many things maybe are falling apart. It seems chaotic, it's stressful, and we're wondering, why are all these things happening? But as I look back on my life, and so many of the guests that I've had have shared this as well, they look back and it starts to all make sense. That even when they were in the thick of it, they couldn't really see it. But after they got out and on the other side, they could look back on the experiences. And I very much resonate with this as well, that you can look back on the experiences of your life and understand why they all had to unfold the way they did. And this is part of the journey, is learning to trust that we are always supported and everything is happening for a reason. So trust the process and trust that it's all unfolding just as it's meant to be. Number 4 is emotions. And through the duration of this podcast, I have had so many personal things going on in my life that have really had me in a place of tremendous grief. And through it, I've realized that I can experience grief and feel that emotion, and I can also experience joy. So I'm also raising a 2 and a 5-year-old, and there's a lot of joy in having young kids. And at the same time, I'm experiencing a lot of grief in my life, and realizing that these two can coexist, and that it's okay for them to coexist, that there's going to be times I'm going to feel grief, and there's going to be times that I feel joy. And that is all part of this human experience, in feeling all the emotions that come along with the things that we experience in life. Number 5, give yourself grace and forgive yourself for things you didn't know. This is such a big lesson personally, but also a theme I've heard through so many of the guests, in that they can look back at times in their life, and if they were in those situations, they may have chosen to do something different. But at the time, they made the best choice that they can make at the level of their consciousness. And I also look back at times in my life where I can see things so much more clearly now, but at the time I couldn't see it that way. And so we have to give ourselves grace for those past versions of ourselves that were just doing the best they could, and really forgive ourselves for anything that we chose at the time, and understand that it really was all there, placed just like the earlier lesson, for a reason. So learning to forgive ourselves, giving ourselves grace, is such an important aspect of feeling more expanded and loving of ourselves in this process. Number 6, you are the co-creator of your life. While it may seem that life is just happening to you and you're just reacting to so many things in your life, you truly have the ability at any point to change the trajectory of your life. Making small changes can have tremendous benefits, and that's actually a lesson that is coming up. But you are the co-creator, and know that at all times, that you have the power to change your life and to create whatever you desire in your life. It just takes changing the way that you believe and really rewiring your brain to see the opportunity when you may not have been able to see that prior. Number seven, your mind is more powerful than you realize. This is something that has come up time and time again in every episode, the power of the mind. I've had guests on here that have healed from tremendous health complications and challenges, and it was all through the mind, in realizing that they had the power to change the way they saw that situation, that they were not victims, and that they had the ability to start allowing their emotions to be released and start healing and start moving themselves in a direction of healing. And that's truly why I named this podcast Rewiring Health, is because once we can start rewiring the patterns in our brain, we are unstoppable. We have so much incredible power in our minds to do so many amazing things and really live the life that we dream of and feel the way we want to feel. And it's just sitting there untapped, waiting for you to open it up and realize the power that you have at every moment. Number eight, we are all energy and we are all part of one collective. And this is something that I've come to know more recently, and especially with so many guests that I've had on that are more spiritually based, and understanding that we are all part of this energy and we are all one. And even though the world may try to make us feel like we're very separate or we're against each other, we really are all in this together. And when we are experiencing something in our life, it affects everyone around us. And in the same way, when we elevate ourselves and we elevate our level of consciousness and our love and our peace and grace for ourselves, that also impacts everyone around us. So we are all an interconnected web and no one is separate. Number nine, going off of that, we are also all guided. There are so many times we can feel so alone in this life, feeling like we're the only ones who really understand, feeling like we have to fix everything ourselves and that the weight of the world is on our shoulders. But we truly are all guided in this. And many of the guests I've had on who are spiritually based share their experiences with this, and that they have guides. We all have guides. Each and every one of us has a guide and a team behind us that is helping us, that is putting things in our path to help us along the way. We just have to be receptive to see that. I have experienced this in my own life and have had books come into my life just at the time I needed to read them. I've had mentors come in my life just at the right time when I needed them. And it was only when I started to be receptive to that that I realized that I am being guided. There are so many resources and things that come across our path just when we need them. And it's only when we start to open our eyes to that and realize that life feels a little lighter and it takes that pressure off us just a little bit more. So we are all always guided. Number 10, slow down. Everything is so fast paced around us. It can so much feel like we're living autopilot, getting through the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, and looking back and wondering, like, where did all the time go? And wondering if we even lived it because it just seemed to pass us by. We go on walks and we can be buried in our phones, or we're stuck on a computer and just going through the list of things that we have to do and taking care of the kids and all the responsibilities that we have. And it can feel like life is on a treadmill going way too fast for us to keep up. But there's no grace in being able to slow down. And the message I've received and so many of my guests have shared is that we have to be intentional about slowing down. I just had a wonderful conversation this morning with a guest I'll be posting that episode in the next few months. But he talked about he was on this lazy river and there was an orchid and he had done multiple laps and hadn't even seen the orchid. But then when a child pointed it out, he started to notice the orchid. And it's something as simple as that, a flower, being able to just slow down and just notice the flower on the path, notice the sunrise. Yesterday, I woke up and everything is ice here right now, and I just noticed the sunrise, and it was this beautiful orange color just reflecting off of the ice, and it was just beautiful. But it was that simple moment of just slowing down, appreciating what's around us, appreciating maybe the giggle of your child, and just sitting there for a moment with your eyes closed and just realizing how precious that is, and that nothing is here forever. And we really just have to intentionally slow down to enjoy these moments and be present. Number 11, going off of that, everything is a miracle. And, Einstein says this, either you believe nothing is a miracle or everything is a miracle. And when you choose to believe that everything is a miracle, you can really just see how precious those small moments are. And then you are not searching for meaning outside of life or trying to figure out when things can feel meaningful. It's here right now. It's in these little moments. It's the fact that you can listen to this right now, that you're taking a moment to listen to this. That's a miracle. The fact that I'm in a very different place than you are geographically and that you can listen to this and that these are messages from people's experiences through decades that can be shared here and that you're listening to this. Even just that simple thing, that is a miracle. Maybe you're out walking right now or driving and the sun is shining and it feels warm on you. That's a miracle. So there are so many things. The fact that we can look at our kids and just see them learn and grow and become different people every day. It's a miracle. So when we can slow down, we can then realize that everything truly is a miracle. And going off of that, number 12 is the impermanence of life. And this is something that has been a theme through so many episodes. I've seen it in my life. The impermanence of life, that nothing lasts forever. Everything is fleeting. So when we can realize that everything is a miracle and we can start to enjoy that and embrace it, we also have to realize that it won't last forever. Every special moment we've had in our lives will not last forever. And I got hit with this lesson very hard about a year and a half ago when my brother unexpectedly passed away. And I just realized how precious life is and that at any moment it can change on a dime. And that we really have to be present and we really have to enjoy every moment of our life, every person in our life that surrounds us with love and savor those moments because we don't know when they will end. And so the impermanence of life is really what makes life precious because it won't last forever. We have to remember that. Number 13, our stories and our thoughts are not our truth. This is such a big one. If you are someone who tends to think negatively or has rumination of thoughts that over and over and over again just continue to replay, it can be so easy to get caught in that trap that you think that's actually you, that you think that's your truth. And it can feel so menacing, especially when you're just trying to get some sleep, to turn that off. You just want to hit the switch so it would just finally turn it off. And I know because I've been there and I know many, pretty much I would say almost all of my guests have been in that place as well, where they experienced this idea that they thought their stories were their truth. They thought their thoughts were their truth. And then that started to dictate their decisions, their beliefs, and everything. And so much of this is stemming from our subconscious beliefs that have been developed throughout our life. But when we can realize that we are not our stories, we are not our thoughts, we are so much more than that, and that we are all innately perfect and we are all love, then we can move life through life much differently. Number 14, life is not happening to us, life is happening for us. This was probably one of the biggest transformations in my life, and one that I hear throughout almost every single guest that I've had on, where at some point in their life, they felt life was happening to them. Maybe it was an illness, maybe it was a financial challenge they went through, maybe it was relationship issues that they were going through. And at the time, they thought life was happening to them. They were just reacting to all the bad things that are happening to them. But it was that transition for me and for all those guests that had shared that when they realized that life was truly actually happening for them, everything opened up and they could see the purpose of all the challenges they had gone through. And they could see that they actually were gifts. They were gifts to open them up to a new beginning. They were gifts to give them a new perspective on life. They were gifts to learn how to love themselves. And that truly is one of the most transformational things I've ever experienced, where I realized that all the things I had been through really were moving me in a direction that I needed to be in. and gave me such incredible insight into myself and into life that I am so incredibly grateful for those challenges. Number 15, in the hardest moments, send love to yourself and others. And this is a lesson that I've heard from many guests and I've experienced in my own life, that when we're going through some tremendous challenges, some of the best ways we can navigate is actually just send ourselves some love and acknowledge that and give ourselves some grace in that moment. And so you can even say to yourself, I see you. I know you're going through this. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you and I love you. And just those words to yourself in that moment can be so incredibly therapeutic. And the same thing for someone who's going through a challenge, or you're going through a challenge yourself and you want to just send love to others who maybe are experiencing something like that. That love that we feel and that we can send to others is so healing in that moment. So if you're going through something really challenging right now, try sending love to yourself in that moment and then send love to someone else in that moment. It can really help you through. Number 16, past challenges become your greatest teachers and gifts. And so again, this goes right off of that life is happening for you. I can look back on so many things that I struggled with. So the idea of perfectionism, thinking I had to be perfect and was trying to mold my external world to make my internal world feel like I was enough, and people pleasing, feeling like I had to make everybody happy and say yes to everything. These have been some major challenges in my life where it really was forming so many of my behaviors and my thoughts and my beliefs, and I was just suffering internally at the time. But some of those biggest challenges have really become such a blessing because I've been able to see myself in a different light. I've been able to heal a lot of those patterns, release a lot of the emotions that I've experienced with that. And now I have such a greater appreciation for my past version of myself, but also the current version of myself. And now I get to help others who are struggling with some of those things. And this is a theme I've heard with so many of my guests, that some of the biggest challenges they had. And some of the challenges I've heard were, people who've had cancer, people who've gone through domestic violence, people who've had chronic illness for a long period of time to the point where they couldn't walk. All these things that they have overcome become the greatest gifts because now they get to help someone in that position. And they are uniquely positioned to help someone. They understand the nuances. They understand what that person is going through. And it really becomes a tremendous gift. So if you're going through a challenge right now, it may be really hard to see that when you're in the thick of it, but one day you're going to look back on that and you're going to realize that it really was a gift. And now you can use what you've gained through that challenge to help someone else and to help yourself in the future. Number 17, purpose is not something we find. It's what we are and who we become in everyday moments. And this is something that has been a theme in so many conversations where we often look outside ourselves thinking we have to do some grandiose thing and then we will finally feel like we have purpose. But purpose is not necessarily in those big moments. Purpose is in everyday moments. Purpose can be in holding the door for someone who's having a hard time. Purpose could be paying for someone's coffee behind you. Purpose could be doing the work you do as a nurse and being supportive and listening to your patients. Purpose comes in so many forms, and it's in how we show up for ourselves. In that, as a mother, your purpose truly could be that you honored yourself today, that you took care of yourself, that you took a moment out of the day to take care of yourself, and now you can show up more wholly for your children. And it can also be that because you've been consistent in that, now your children see that example of how you can honor yourself, and they will continue to do that. And what a beautiful purpose that is. It's in those simple little things. The fact that maybe you went to go take a walk, you drank enough water today, that you did some meditation and some breath work to make sure that you were in a more regulated state, and now your children are seeing you lead by example. That is purpose. Purpose is in guiding others in whatever way you can. How can you help somebody in the smallest way right now? It's in these everyday moments that is our purpose. So if you're listening to this, what are those little moments that you can do today to show up for yourself and others and realize that you are living your purpose? Number 18, forgive yourself and others. We carry so much weight throughout our lives when we hold on to anger, resentment. Maybe people have really wronged us. Maybe we've gone through tremendous, horrific challenges. And it can be so easy to almost hold on to that anger and that maybe that shame that you feel from it, or guilt, or whatever the emotion is that you're holding on to in those moments. But it's through that forgiveness that we release ourselves, that we're able to feel more free in life and go through life with a whole new perspective. And we also physically become healthier. It's through the emotions that we hold on to is where disease breeds. So by releasing that, forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, learning how to do that, that's truly how we can start showing up in this world in a lighter and more freeing way for ourselves and others. Number 19, what matters more than the behavior is the energy that is behind it. Oh man, this was such a big one for me to learn because there are so many behaviors that we can look at and say, well, that's productive, that's good. But then when I got honest with myself, the energy behind it really was fear. So one example is like I would work all the time and like my mind would be constantly thinking about all the things I have to do and I couldn't relax and I would just be like glued to my chair just trying to get through the to-do lists. And that behavior may not necessarily be bad. So if I am just in love with everything I'm doing and it's giving me life and joy and it's lighting me up, then it's okay to do that because you're guided by love. It's lifting you up. But for many years, I was just working exhaustively out of fear, out of if I stop this pace, things will fall apart. If I go easy on myself, I'll take my foot off the gas and I don't know if I can get it back down on the gas hard again to keep this pace back up when I have to get back into it. So it's so fear-based, all these things. It can even be, where the people-pleasing tendencies come out. We can be really kind and say yes to people, but what is the energy behind it? Are we saying yes and being kind because we love this person? Well, in that case, that's amazing. But are we doing it because we fear the consequences that they may not be happy with us? They might be disappointed with us. They might feel some resentment towards us. Then the energy behind your behaviors is fear at that point. So when you look at your life, you have to dig a little bit deeper. And this has been so eye-opening for me because there's so many things I would look at in my life and think that they were supportive. And then I would look at it deeper and be like, oh, wow, it's actually fear that's driving that behavior. So when we look at behaviors, it's not necessarily the behavior that can be maladaptive, it's the energy behind it. So when you look at your behaviors, are you being guided by love for yourself and others, or you're being guided by fear of maybe some consequence or thing that could happen if you don't show up in that way? And number 20, small, consistent actions make huge transformations. I see this in my life every single day, and every single one of the guests I've had on have shared this same sentiment that it wasn't this big, overarching, life-altering big pivot that happened in one day. It was the small decisions every day that they're going to show up a little bit differently. It was reading just 10 pages a day. It was doing a little bit of breath work in the morning, adding a little bit of meditation. And doing behaviors that start to serve them, that allowed them to become a different version of themselves. And that consistency is what allowed them to embody a different identity. So they start to see themselves differently. They start to see themselves as I'm someone who shows up for myself, has integrity. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And that consistency of doing that day in and day out, the consistency of the meditation, the breath work, the connections they made or moving towards their goals, that was what made the difference. That was what was the transformation. On the health journeys, some of the guests I've had who've had tremendous health struggles, it was the consistency that they were devoted to themselves. They were devoted to the future version of themselves that was healthy, to the version of themselves that was living a fulfilled life. And they were taking the consistent actions to get to that place. They were transforming their thoughts. They were releasing emotions each day. It was that small, consistent action that made tremendous difference. And so if you're listening to this and you want to feel different in your life, you do not need to overhaul your life in this moment. That actually, in most cases, backfires because it becomes this stress response, and then you automatically develop a resistance for that. All you have to do is just take one step forward today. And then tomorrow, just take another little step forward, and you just continue to do this. And then you start to feel a little bit different. Then you start to build momentum. Then you start to feel even more different. And then it automatically becomes this process of like, I am becoming a different person. I am identifying as a different person. And then your external world starts to mirror what's going on within yourself. And that is how you become a different version. You start to rewire your brain little by little, and then you become and identify as someone different. You develop different beliefs, and then your thoughts follow your beliefs, and then your emotions follow those. And now you are literally feeling like a different person, and then everything else will fall into place after that. So those were 20 of the top takeaways I have gained from hosting this podcast for nearly 3 years, having the conversations with 110 guests and plus some that I haven't even posted yet, and through the solo episodes of every single day I read, every single day I'm listening to other podcasts, every single day I'm expanding myself and living what I share on here, those consistent actions. If you were to look at me 6 years ago, I would not be the same person that you're seeing today. And it wasn't this big overnight transformation. It was just trusting myself little by little and investing in myself little by little and wanting more, having a desire in my life to feel different, and then taking the action, the guided action to do that. So I just want to send my deepest gratitude to you for tuning into Rewiring Health, for being part of this community. And I truly hope that you have gained something from this podcast, from the conversations, from my solos, from this episode. And I would love to hear what's inspired you? What has really stuck with you? Is there a message, a guest, anything that's really resonated with you? I would love to hear from you. Send me a message on any of my social media. You can email me, and I would love to hear what's really stuck out for you so that I can continue to create material that resonates with you. This has been the most amazing experience, and the cool thing is that it's just continuing to grow, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be like from episode 200 to 300. And I am just so incredibly grateful that 3 years ago I trusted myself, I stepped into that discomfort, and I leaned into it, and here we are today, 200 episodes in, and I'm so excited to see where this continues to go. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.